I love talking about old games. Like, a lot, okay? Maybe you're saying, well geez, why don't you just stop dwelling in the past and just move on, bro? And you know what? I'd have your mouth boarded up if I could afford the wood. Alright? Alright. I'm gonna talk about why Mario Sunshine is totally okay. It's no secret that Mario is damn famous. Like, seriously famous. Many people who haven't played a game in their life will still know who Mario is, and it's all because of those years during the 80s and 90s that all began with Nintendo deciding to make a successor to the 1983 arcade title Mario Bros, which was ever so creatively named Super Mario Bros, and it would become the first in a very long series known as Super Mario. A lot of people have suggested that the Super Mario series has had an extremely strong influence on what platformers are today, and I can agree with that. However, you could also say that platformers are just platformers and there's no real way of knowing that existence of Mario shepherded the mechanics in any way. And I'd probably agree with that as well. One thing is for sure in my books though, one of the greatest things about the two-dimensional Marios in the series was that the premise of the game was literally Peach's kidnapped, go to the right side of the level and jump on things. There really is something about that sort of simplicity that's really charming. Generally speaking, any additions to the franchise had just been different power-ups and access to Yoshi. Today, however, we have all manner of different things involved in the 3D renditions of the Super Mario games. More or less, the base objectives are still there. Get to the end of the level and save Peach, each with new mechanics, some being less important than the others. Ranging from new simple iterations of a super mushroom or something like Mario Galaxy's physics system, the great thing about these games is that the mechanics are really basic, but at the same time, they offer a myriad of challenges. It's really surprising and impressive how legitimate purple coin or hardcore runs of levels feel. Generally though, it's the scenery, art style, non-linear nature, characters, combat system, and the nonsensical concepts that are casually tossed around that make them stand out in a crowd. Nowadays, Mario games are most likely defined as a platforming game, with lots of exploration, collectibles, bad guys, and user-friendly controls. Come back to 2002, when the Nintendo GameCube was still relevant, 6 years after the last Super Mario game on console. On the 26th of August, Super Mario fans that were gained from the previous title on N64, and prior to that, were treated to the new Super Mario Bros., Super Mario Sunshine, which was then to be released 2 months later in Europe and Australia. Fans were finally given a brand new game to obsess over, to get back into a completionist state of mind over, and waste hours upon hours on. In this game, Mario was to be accompanied by Flash Liquidizer Ultra Dowsing Device, or FLUDD, the ability to spray water, hover, shoot up into the sky, and blasting forward. Along with this, the game brought a whole new landscape of stunning scenery. The game took place in a tropical island where it was always sunny and awesome. The game also had some of the best water effects for its time, and Miyamoto even praised that specifically. They even stand up half decently against today's standards, in my opinion. FLUDD brought with him various new mechanics to the game. The game also brought a storyline that was beyond the simplicity of Peach is in trouble, go get her, and it actually had some turns and changes as the story evolved. The game neglected, however, to bring back many old enemies and some old mechanics. Because of one reason or another, the departures that this game made away from its predecessors caused a lot of uproar among some fans. People would complain about the new enemies being ridiculous, non-threatening, and boring, that the voice acting in the game was so cringeworthy and unnecessary that it caused some people to just flat out yell. That FLUDD was incredibly lame, some people going as far to say that if the same mechanics were slapped onto another game without Mario's label, the game would have fallen flat on its face. It really surprises me how many people actually feel like this game was a terrible mess. In my opinion, the inclusion of FLUDD and the 4 nozzles that he included opens a lot of new doors, and it also allows for a lot of variety. The controls were fixed using the GameCube's tech so that Mario handled a lot more tightly and responsively. They implemented the forward leap that could be achieved by simply pressing B, which actually, if done right in the context, can feel awesome. But overall, the feature works really well alongside the rest of the controls. Mario handles super well, and triple jumps feel better than ever before. They added a quick spin-like move that allows you to spin around then spray water everywhere. A bit similar like the quick spin in Zelda. It's not really necessary to do at any point in the game, but it does look really cool. There's a lot of variety in levels as well. In one level you'll fight Petey Piranha, and in another you'll be running squids in a sewer system. Challenges come in lots of different shapes and sizes, like fighting a manta ray, and hardcore platforming without the advantage of using FLUDD. However, there are so many things that people claim to be wrong with the game, and it's impressive to actually take a step back and realize that, although perhaps at a minority, the people that believe Mario Sunshine was a bad game believe it harshly. And so thus... 1. As a good start, people sometimes say that compared to other Mario games, it didn't bring anything new to the table, and even go as far to blame the storyline and setting on the island for this, saying that the developers had to cater to the idea that because the Mario universe was being treated in a way that people existed, and that there were politics in the game, they had to make it more realistic, and less like a Mario game. To them, I say, are you kidding me? The changes in Sunshine had nothing to do with attempting to make the whole game more sensible. In fact, it's pretty much on par with the outrageous nature of Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2. You're on an island populated by these guys. You're accompanied by a machine that talks, and then the game tells you to go nuts and travel from place to place in a similar way to Mario 64 through paint on a wall. Beyond this, warp zones are still very much a thing, and if you think that shit makes sense, you really have had a hell of a lot of acid in your time. Watering plants to make sandcastles? A bird made entirely of sand screeching through the sky with red coins on its back? You can't tell me that that makes more or less sense than 64 or Galaxy, and they hardly affect the game in any negative manner whatsoever. Super Mario Sunshine brought a lot to the table, at least equal to or more than the previous games. In the first Super Mario Bros., it was the mushroom, flower, and star. Super Mario 2 hardly added anything except for a throwing mechanic. 3 introduced the suit, leaf, and the P-Wing. Mario Land had a super flower. Mario World brought feather and balloon. Mario 64 had all the caps, which was totally new, and in Sunshine it does the same thing. It has all the nozzles, which are all new as well. If you're going to talk about like bringing mechanics to the table like that means nothing new in the game, then you could just say because Mario Galaxy had different mushrooms that there was nothing new to the game at all, but rather took a step back. But you wouldn't say that because I'm sure you're not insane. With that, you can't really claim that the game was made bad because of the upgrades or the storyline. 2. Some people complain that the voice acting for every character was awful, and I can somewhat agree honestly, but claims that Peaches sounded like a bimbo are a bit much in my opinion, considering the prior voice acting for Peach sounded less like a human and more like a text-to-speech program. In Sunshine, the voice acting for Peach was fine. However, the voice acting for Bowser and Bowser Jr. is just annoying in my opinion. Bowser's voice isn't menacing or evil sounding, it's just weird, and Bowser Jr. is a bit annoying. And my only problem with Flood is when he says,
"This appears to be quite a predicament, Mario."
But easily my least favorite would be this guy.
And remember, we'll be watching you, pal. We'll know if you start slacking off.
Ugh. Well, at least Toadsworth sounds like a boss.
Now, boys, don't touch that stuff.
Excellent. 3. One of the most popular things that I've heard as a fault of the game was its overarching environmental message. But when I first played the game, the concept wasn't really associated for me. For me, the game was just like an OCD's dream. Somehow, making things look neat was fun. There's hardly an environmental message in the game, in my opinion. It's not as if the missions were walking about to make sure that the beach was free of litter and Flood was a spike that you used to pick up garbage and put into bins. Believe it or not, this game isn't Street Cleaning Simulator. There's much more to the game than just mess on the floor to pick up. 4. As another fault, you could try and say that there's not much variety in the level aesthetic. But in fact, yes there is. There's a bustling city overworld with markets, housing, and people chilling at the beach. There's summery countryside hills, an industrial harbour, a happy beach, a scary beach, a theme park, a super secluded bay, a tribal village, and the inside of a volcano. Yeah, it doesn't vary as much as Mario 64's lava worlds to snowy mountains, but why exactly is that bad? It's not as if the levels feel like the same thing over and over. Each one has its own feeling and emotion. It would feel silly to have too much variation to the point of a snowy mountain anyway, because unlike Mario 64, the levels are all geographically next to each other. 5. As I said before, I've heard people say that Flood's the reason that there aren't any good new mechanics. Coincidentally, the first time that I heard that from a person, they also stated that the metal cap and flying caps shouldn't have been removed. You can't argue there needs to be good new mechanics, then complain that the old ones aren't there! 6. People have suggested that Flood is trying to be like Kazooie, Daxter, or Clank. They say he's trying to be a likable character, but he's just super annoying. There are claims that his
Mario
yelling is obnoxious. No, Navi yelling
Hey, listen!
was obnoxious. Flood only has one line of dialogue in-game, and it's quiet and non-invasive. He only ever tells you things at the arrival of new mechanics or obstacles, and doesn't halt gameplay whatsoever. 7. But it's not scary or adult enough. Aw, shut up! Galaxy didn't have any remotely scary enemies either. Bugaboom? Diggerleg? Fire Gobblegut? Dino Piranha? Are you telling me those instilled fear in you? No, the only game that included that aesthetic was Mario 64. Even then, the only thing that was menacing in that game was the piano with teeth. In no other level in any of the games in the whole series aim to spook the player on a tangible level. 8. But the game can be way too hard. The core game giant sprites are a bit tough at their worst. The extras for completionists are the only parts that can get ridiculous. For normal sprites though, it feels like the game is just giving you a challenge. Having trouble with Serena Beach's Manta Ray fight for me was basically like getting the last enemy in Space Invaders. It's tough, but so incredibly possible just with a technique. It's not bad if a game asks you to get better, and I'm not convinced it's too hard. Again, the platforming levels that leave you with that flood to kick it old school for a challenge are really hard, rock hard. They require you to bring your A game with side flips, wall kicks, and jumping timing. That's just it. They require you to be skillful. A good challenge in a game will ask you to step up to the challenge, and that's exactly what it does. 9. Everyone says that the camera is not intuitive. Some claim the camera will randomly fly through buildings. I can somewhat agree that it will sometimes do odd things, but overall the camera just works fine in my opinion. It's less responsive and less tight than the C-stick-free camera in Wind Waker, but it still doesn't have any glaring problems. It's no secret that in enclosed areas, like climbing Boo's and Serena Beach Hotel, that the camera can feel really annoying. But for the most part, I never really had a big issue with it, and neither have many people that I've talked to. Each to their own anyway, I guess. 10. The surprisingly popular complaints are the ones about lines in the game saying, be nice to your animals, or clean your teeth, being preschooler stuff, that games shouldn't teach. In my opinion, this is really super nitpicky. One of the people who said it even mentioned himself. There's only like 2 examples of this happening in the game. I'll agree, it's a bit cringy to see that, and kind of makes players a bit older feel kind of awkwarded out by it. It's not something that helps a game, but it's hardly something to notably grudge about. 11. Some of the non-intuitive puzzles are just silly, e.g. spraying fish with juice. The solution really sounds weird, but there are other points in the game where shooting enemies with water turns them into platforms. Given this knowledge, it was really quite easy to figure out what to do by simply noticing the convenient positions of leaping Cheep Cheeps. I'll agree, it's a bit weird, and not the most logical thing, but it's not so stupid like Castlevania 2's Wall. If I could figure it out when I was so young, I'm sure you can do it too. Again, there's no denying this is a shitty puzzle, but seriously, in the grand scheme of things, this aspect of the puzzle is minuscule, and the whole thing isn't even necessary to beat the game. 12. Someone once told me that you just go from level to level, not for the fun, but because you want to beat it, because it's a Mario game. This is impossibly dumb. If this was a truth, then everyone playing the game would be wasting their spare time. Nobody plays a game simply to beat it if it's not fun, unless it's I want to be the guy. Saying that people only beat the game for the sake of beating it is mind-bogglingly confusing, and I don't really want to dwell on it any longer than I should. 13! I've heard the story stops at the premise. Well, it doesn't. It unfolds further as you continue through the game, more so than its predecessors too. From what I can remember, it's one of the only games that had a storyline that develops beyond Go Save Peach. 14. Some say that the story is bad because of the setting, but that's just silly. They didn't say, oh shit, we can't make it the same thing as last times. Now we have to change things. 15. A complaint that I do agree with is that blue coins felt unfair to grab, because it gave you access to a lot of effortless shine sprites. Sometimes it led to horrible coin hunts, going from level to level trying to find them. So yes, agree, and that was improved greatly in Galaxy with the prankster comments. I feel like most of these issues that people have with the game are pretty unfair to call out on, but from what I can see, devs weren't confined to a select amount of ideas that they could implement into the game. If they wanted to put a giant robot Bowser, let's say an encounter with a giant squid where you tear off its limbs. Oh wait, never mind. Alright, well, okay. So, an invasion of manta rays that electrocute. Oh no. No, that's not. People will say these ideas are simply not good because they don't like them. That's it. No reason. However, there's only a few encounters in Galaxy and Mario 64 that stray beyond jumping on their back / hitting their back on a small planet and jumping on them / throwing them around 3 times respectively. Look, I'm not trying to say it's my favorite Mario game, but I do believe that it's on par with Mario Galaxy. Maybe a bit lower in quality. It's just when people say that it sucks for reason XYZ that makes me confused. I don't mind people having their own opinions, but if they're going to shout out about how they're right, they should at least take into account the scope of what they're looking at. Mario Sunshine is a fine game, and at least the developers tried something new. If a sequel is to just iterate the same exact thing as the predecessor, then it's really not going to be great in my opinion. But I digress. The point is, although Mario Sunshine has some problems, I personally believe that it stands out as an example of what Nintendo is capable of, and by no means sucks, or is the worst game since Super Mario Bros. 2. Hey, thanks for not closing the video. If you have any thoughts about how wrong I was about everything, then feel free to leave a comment, or you can, I don't know, maybe you can give me a like? That'd be cool.